Google Doodles. You probably don't really need an explanation for these, because if you used Google before, you're essentially guaranteed to have seen or played at least one of them. According to the official Google Doodle Archive website, they're known as the fun, surprising, and sometimes spontaneous changes that are made to the Google logo to celebrate holidays, anniversaries, and the lives of famous artists, pioneers, and scientists. But there's something else about a few of these Google Doodles, something else that goes unnoticed for most of the people who play these games. And I'm talking about a whole Google Doodle universe, one on the level of having actual lore, character arcs, borderline time travel, characters that reside outside of the doodles themselves, and absolutely obliterating the fourth wall in more than one instance. This is a story that has taken place over nearly 8 years, through a slew of games and animations, and is far from being over. So let's take a deep dive into the Doodle cinematic universe, and attempt to unravel the story of the Google Doodles. The first instance of the Google Doodle universe that I could find was released on October 31st, 2015, officially called the Halloween Global Candy Cup. Google had been creating doodles celebrating Halloween for years, with the first one being released in 1999, and a new one being released every year since then, but this was the first time that we got an actual global game out of a doodle. Every Google Doodle also comes with a description beneath it, with information about why it was made, what or who it celebrates, and its creators. So let's read the one for this game. Welcome to the Global Candy Cup, a fierce competition where 4 extraordinary witches race to collect the most candy before the end of Halloween. Join one witch's worldwide team and keep playing throughout the day to add to your team's score. Only one team will go home with the cup. Will it be yours? Get to know your contender below, and may the best witch win. The 4 witches' names in question aren't particularly innovative, being blue, red, yellow, and green, the colors of the Google logo. The games, in the end, wouldn't turn out to be too close either, with the yellow team solidly beating the red team and absolutely obliterating both the blue and green teams. And while this single button, silly little game may not seem to carry a whole lot of significance to it, we'll soon find out that it carries much more weight than we expect. Let's take a look at the witches, who each have actual biographies written about them on the Doodle's website. Blue is described as a happy-go-lucky, cheerful witch who loves golden retrievers and has a really strong reliance on her glasses. An interesting detail about this, however, is that Blue was, quote, able to find some joy in her nearsightedness with the help of a sympathetic medieval craftsman. So, does that mean that the game takes place during the medieval ages? Well, the background architecture would certainly suggest it, with castles, houses, and scarecrows. That theory makes a lot of sense, right up until we see the power lines in the background. Anyway, let's go on to the next witch, the aptly named Red. The super competitive witch is reportedly competing in the Candy Cup for the 3rd time, so we know that this event has taken place in the past. We also know that Red has a younger brother who she enjoys pummeling into the ground, is strong both in physical abilities and magic, and has a spirit animal of the incredibly formidable and aggressive honey badger, very fitting for the character. Our 3rd witch is the bookworm Green. Quiet, humble, and always with a book in her nose, Green is written as unenthusiastic about physical activity. Green prefers to hone her craft in the bowels of a library rather than in the air, but she's not to be written off. Her appetite for any and all literature related to flying makes her magnificently crafty. Finally, our 4th and final witch is the Yellow Witch, who is absolutely, completely obsessed with one thing and one thing only: cats. And this is probably the reason that, during the actual competition in 2015, the Yellow Witch absolutely blew her competition out of the water, with Red being the only one to put up a fight and Blue and Green getting absolutely steamrolled. Yellow is also described as being quick, cunning, and delightfully aloof as well. That wraps up the Global Candy Cup for now. After Halloween passed in 2015, the Googlers of the world who flew with Yellow would be pleased with her overwhelming victory against her fellow competitors, and the fun little competition seemed to end here. That would be the case for the story, until just 1 year later in 2016. The 2016 Magic Cat Academy Google Doodle can't be described as really anything but pretty iconic. Even 7 years ago, I could still distinctly remember playing it in elementary school, and to this day it still holds up as a genuinely good game. But beyond being a fun game and enjoying the absolutely banger music, is there an actual story to this game in any way? Well, you're watching this video, so you could probably figure yes. Let's read the description first. Happy Halloween! Grab your wand and help fend off a ghostly catastrophe. Press play to swipe spells, save your friends, and help restore the peace at the Magic Cat Academy. This year's Halloween Doodle follows freshman feline Momo on her mission to rescue her school of magic. Help her cast out mischievous spirits by swiping in the shape of the symbols above the ghosts' heads. And you'd better pounce fast. The ghost that stole the Master Spellbook is getting away. Heading into the lore, Momo the Black Cat already bears a ridiculously strong resemblance to the Yellow Witch's Black Cat from 2015. And further down in the 2016 doodle description, the creators note that it seemed like a good opportunity for a cat hero, since the winner of last year's Candy Cup Doodle was a Yellow Witch and her Black Cat. So that's the creators outright telling us that there's a relative connection between the doodles. However, this isn't a direct confirmation that they are the same cat. Momo in Magic Cat Academy behaves much more like a human than a cat, while the one in the Candy Cup Doodle is much more cat-like. One of the main Google artists that created the doodle, Juliana Chen, has a blog site about where she shows some behind-the-scenes info and photos from when the doodle was created. In one of these photos from a scrapped concept about the game, we actually get to see this transformation happen. In a storyboard from the intro of the scrapped concept, we get to see Momo, implied to be with the Yellow Witch, jump off her broom and transform from the normal cat into the wizard version that we're used to. And while this version of the story technically isn't 100% canon, it's nice to at least have some knowledge about what the heck happened to Momo to go between her two forms. We also get to see some other aspects of the game, like more scrapped concepts and ghosts that never made it into the game. And to be honest, a few of these concepts were pretty dark for her. Like, jeez. Even Juliana admits herself that the fire is a little bit much. Nevertheless, going back to the actual doodle, Magic Cat Academy follows the story of Momo the cat trying to protect her school of magic from evil ghosts who have kidnapped her friends and taken the magic spellbook. Yes, you heard that right, her school. Apparently Momo either owns the place or has some sort of connection with someone who does. And both of these are pretty weird considering the fact that Momo is also a freshman. Either that or the description means that Momo is just attending the school and doesn't own it at all, which is more likely from the freshman info that we just mentioned. Throughout the game, we travel throughout the school's various environments, defeating the ghosts by drawing the symbols appearing above their heads. We start in the library and move to a kitchen, science room, courtyard, and finally the rooftop, where Momo squares off against the Big Boss ghost, ultimately getting back her book and flying back to the school roof, where her friends have been freed from the clutches of the ghosts. Overall, the game is pretty fun, and in many ways serves as the ideal Google Doodle game. Not too long, relatively simple to understand, and, like all games, a good amount of fun. But we're not here to analyze the surface level. We're here to take the deep dive into this lore, and Magic Cat Academy has no shortage of it. First of all, none of the ghosts that Momo defeats are actually killed, because in the winning game screen, we can see that all of the bosses that Momo defeated are actually still there, just dazed and confused. Obviously we couldn't exactly kill a ghost, but you can never really tell with those death animations. Like, those are kinda brutal. Momo doesn't exactly die as far as we could tell if the player loses the game either, as the losing screen simply shows her surrounded by ghosts instead of actually turning into one. And while this could imply that she is joining the ghosts as well, I would doubt it for the sake of the difference in design and color in the end screen. Also included in the game is the first time that we see a ghost not being hostile. When Momo is attacked by the ghosts and loses one of her 5 lives, a heart ghost shaped like a cat appears. By drawing the heart symbol above its head, Momo can actually gain back a lost life. This is interesting because it makes us wonder why some ghosts choose to harm us while others choose to inadvertently help. I'm gonna be honest, it took me a long time to notice that the extra life cat ghost is actually just as angry as the others. I kept confusing the arm for an eye and the mouth for a nose, so if you stare at it long enough you should probably notice it too. Also, we know that for some reason, the only other non-animal and non-ghost character in the game is one of Momo's friends who happens to be a pumpkin. Why this is the case, I'm not really sure, but there's one small connection that I could definitely make with other Google products, and, be it a coincidence or not, is pretty interesting. For those of you who have ever used Google Docs, or any files with Google Drive, you're probably aware of the anonymous animals that will appear when a user viewing a file is not logged into their account. Weirdly enough, of the dozens of anonymous animals in the group, only one of them isn't an animal, because it's a pumpkin. So make of that what you will, but the fact that the only character who's not an animal or a ghost in the Magic Cat Academy doodle happens to be a pumpkin is kind of a weird coincidence if it wasn't intentional. Momo's other classmates include an incredibly tired owl, which makes sense, the poor thing being nocturnal would be absolutely exhausted throughout the day. I'm not blaming the guy. A dog which looks something like a golden retriever can also be seen with Momo, and while there's not a whole lot of information about the dog, he seems to be pretty eager to find out about Momo's return and the successful defense of the school. However, it's Momo's last classmate, the frog character, that interests me the most. Those who use the Google app or Google Home Hubs will have noticed that when using Google Weather, a particularly persistent character will often appear. That's right, the frog. With an official name as Froggy, the frog is the actual mascot of Google Weather, and we have dozens of photos of Froggy in various forms of weather. Some of these actually include, you guessed it, Momo the cat, like this photo during in 2020 with Momo, Froggy, and a different fox character who we'll be discussing plenty more in the future. Let's take a quick look at some of the bosses in Magic Cat Academy. The first boss, which takes place in the library level, seems to be the librarian, a teacher, maybe a former student. It's hard to tell. The Doodle fandom, however, seems to be in agreement that it's the librarian. The next level, which takes place in the kitchen, has a ghost of a pot. That's it, not a normal ghost, not a humanoid ghost, but just a pot. And that begs the question, what exactly can a ghost be in this universe? Why do we have ghosts of inanimate objects? The third level, which seems to take place in a science classroom, has a boss that is, like the pot, not a living creature. The boss is a diorama of the solar system, taking place of the sun and with different arms being the planets. It seems at this point that a ghost could just kinda take the form of really anything it wants. And this solar system is actually one of my favorites because of its expressions and its quick attack style. The fourth level has one of the most confusing bosses. Appearing like something between a witch and a gym coach, the court level ghost is an odd change of pace from the ghosts that we've seen before. Finally, the fifth and final boss is our main antagonist, the original ghost who stole the spellbook from Momo. This ghost doesn't have a lot of interesting characteristics either, but he shows us that the aforementioned spellbook that Momo carries around packs a serious punch, and I definitely wouldn't want to be playing around with the book if I was Momo. I mean, this guy is just opening his third eye like Doctor Strange here, so. The ghost's intentions beyond being simple pranksters is clear, and that's to steal Momo's overpowered spellbook. That just makes me wonder what the heck is in there, because if the boss ghost can become that insanely overpowered by uttering one 5-second spell, I'd be pretty scared to think of what else is in there. And with that, we say goodbye to Magic Cat Academy, giving us by far the biggest lore dump of the 2 doodles we've covered so far. But let's get on with the story for now, and that story continues in April 2017. The next doodle in the list is Earth Day 2017. It's pretty short, and it's the first of these lore doodles that isn't really interactive either. Instead, this doodle merely consists of a simple slideshow to celebrate Earth Day. In the slides, we see 3 familiar characters, Momo and Froggy, and a third, the fox that we saw in the photo with Froggy and Momo to celebrate 2020. The doodle is described as follows. Today's doodle follows the story of a fox who dreams about an Earth that's been polluted and adversely affected by climate change. The fox wakes with a startle and urgently starts making small lifestyle changes to take care for the Earth. The doodle, while short and sweet, doesn't give us a huge amount of information to go off of, but it does show us the various places and areas that the animals go to. More importantly, it introduces us to the fox character and establishes something that we've all suspected for a very long time. Right after the doodle's main description, we get the following. Along the way, the fox enlists friends, including Momo the cat and Google Weather's favorite frog, to join its quest to protect and nurture the environment. Both Momo and Froggy's names list back to their respective websites, Momo to the Magic Cat Academy archive doodle, and the Weather Frog to a Google blog post showcasing the new features of Google Weather. So with this information, we can finally confirm our suspicions that the frog in Magic Cat Academy is in fact the frog from Google Weather. Momo, in true cat fashion, opts to bathe in the sun while the characters are talking about different ways to save energy, like wind and solar. Overall, while the doodle is pretty short, I do appreciate it for both the art style and positive message it gives. And with that, we move on to the next main installment of the Doodle Lore, Halloween 2017. The Halloween 2017 Google Doodle is one of my favorites of the list. Instead of a game or picture like we're used to, the 2017 Doodle is a fully fledged animated short film with an amazing soundtrack to accompany the spectacular animation. So I'm going to give a quick recap of the animation and then take a look at the lore of the doodle. It's Halloween night and Momo and Froggy are back, along with that fox character whose name we still don't know. Froggy's dressed as a pirate, the fox as a robot, and Momo in yellow robes and a hat, a reference to the Yellow Witch's outfit. The 3 of them go trick-or-treating together and run past an old house which is haunted by a ghost who we come to learn is named Jinx. Eventually, Jinx makes the decision to face their fears and go and trick-or-treat with the others. However, they aren't willing to risk being seen as a ghost, so they decide to dress up as a witch instead. Jinx doesn't get very far before traumatizing the bunch. Undeterred, our protagonist once again tries a new disguise, this time as a mummy. And this just ends in more chaos. Jinx goes through dozens of costumes until finding the perfect one. A ghost, go figure. He finally gets close enough to the group, and after Momo drops her hat on the ground, Jinx returns it to her. A gust of wind goes by and blows Jinx's cover, causing Momo to experience PTSD, and Jinx to experience the pinnacle of absolute fear. However, Momo seems to have a change of heart since last year, and seeing Jinx's kindness, decides not to eviscerate them from their plane of existence, and instead inviting Jinx to finally go trick-or-treating with the others. The group walks off into the moonlight, where we see the countless other drawings that Jinx has made of the group, and that's where we end. That was a lot, so let's go into lore. The doodle site's description, right off the bat, gives us one of the most important clues that we've gotten so far. It reads as follows. Happy Halloween. If it isn't the witches, werewolves, or goblins that haunt us every Halloween, It's the ghastly task of deciding what to wear. Do the spooky creatures of the night face a similar ordeal? Today's doodle checks in on Jinx, the lonely ghost who embarks on a mission to find the perfect costume and a place to belong. Last year, Momo successfully defended Magic Cat Academy from the clutches of a mischievous ghost invasion. This year, Jinx desperately wants to join Momo and the other trick-or-treaters outside. Not wanting to scare anyone, the lonely ghost agonizes over a costume to blend in with the trick-or-treaters, wreaking havoc in the process. In the end, Jinx finds that wearing a disguise is no match for being yourself. And in the behind-the-scenes section, we get this. In keeping with the Halloween doodle tradition, the team felt like it was time to follow the tales of Momo and the Candy Cup Witches with the ghost side of the story. And there it is. I mean, they're just pushing it in our faces at this point. All the games, all the shorts, and all the doodles that we've talked about so far are 100% connected and have an ongoing story. And now that we know that the Candy Cup Witches and Magic Cat Academy are in the same storyline, we can be pretty much certain that Momo is the Yellow Witch's cat. However, it's odd that the short doesn't include any depictions, references, or even mentions of the 4 witches themselves, at least not that I could tell. And the short also raises plenty of questions compared to answers, like what's with Jinx being the only ghost that hasn't decided to participate in the others' actions, and even being afraid of them? What's the deal with Jinx living all alone in the old decrepit house surrounded by normal ones? And most importantly, what caused Momo's change of heart, being visibly scared for her life upon seeing Jinx's true ghost form? I think the answer has something to do with the amount of time that's passed from the events of Magic Cat Academy and Jinx's night out. Since we know that the film takes place a year after the events of Magic Cat Academy, Momo might have had a chance to get the situation under control, possibly trying to make amends with the ghosts, although that might be unlikely. Obviously, Jinx's decision to help Momo with her hat was the deciding factor in their fate, but it begs the question of whether Momo would have defeated them had things gone differently. It's also interesting to note that Jinx is able to simultaneously interact with physical objects, but is also non-solid and permeable when they want to be. Jinx's body also disappears in the mirror while trying on costumes, which is a really nice detail. So let's talk about Jinx's house next. It's incredibly out of place in the seemingly normal neighborhood where the trick-or-treaters are. Jinx stares longingly at the 3 before taking a look around the house, and this scene gives us some of the most information about the lore that we get in the short. In the corner of the first shot, if you look closely, there's a framed photo of the boss ghost from Magic Cat Academy, with his third eye, which means that the photo, or painting for that matter, I can't tell, must have been from level 5. We also see a painting of the ghost actively terrorizing masses of people. For some reason they're limited to the species of the Earth Day trio, maybe the family members, but it does beg the question. Moving on from Jinx's house, it's fairly obvious that the ending screen shows Jinx and the crew having way more fun in the future, and it makes me wonder how far into the future the universe goes. The main animator and creator of the doodle, Nate Swinehart, showcased a few of the behind the scenes on his Tumblr account called Naterade, including storyboards, concept designs for Jinx, and more. One of the things I find interesting is the fact that on some of the super early test animations, instead of Momo, Froggy, and the Fox, the trio of trick-or-treaters are replaced with actual human kids. And while we know that humans exist in the universe thanks to the 2015 witches, these are the first ones we've seen since then. And some of the tags on the post, alongside Halloween, Google Doodle, storyboards, and others, we get this one. We are building a Doodle cinematic universe. Okay, so here's our official title for all this, the Doodle Cinematic Universe. And with that, we wrap up Jinx's Night Out. I genuinely love this little short film, and it serves a pretty important role in the lore of the series. So let's continue with that and move to Halloween 2018. The Halloween Google Doodle for 2018 is another first for Google Doodles, in this case being the first multiplayer Google Doodle. However, there's a massive distinction between this Google Doodle and previous ones, since we're actually playing as the ghosts. Here's our description. Happy Halloween! Today's annual Halloween Doodle marks a wickedly exciting milestone, our first ever multiplayer interactive game doodle, powered by Google Cloud. Join in as ghosts around the world gather to play their own version of Trick or Treat, the Great Ghoul Duel. Ghosts team up and compete to see who can collect the most wandering spirit flames before the moon is gone, but not without some unexpected twists along the way. Players around the world join forces on one of 2 teams of 4 in the game. Exploring one of the several spooky maps, players must collect as many wandering spirit flames as they can in 2 minutes and return them to their home base. After time's up, the team that has collected the most spirit flames wins. But beware, opponents can intercept spirits from one another as they bring them back to the home base. As an added bonus, ghosts who collect the most spirit flames will unlock special powers such as speed boosts, night vision, and much more. Players can also share personal
superlatives
awarded to them at the end of the match based on their scary good, or just plain scary, performances. And if we look further down on the page, we can see that, surprisingly, the ghosts actually have names. On the green team, the ghosts are named Jade, Sage, Kelly, and Olive, and on the purple teams their names are Plum, Periwinkle, Iris, and Mulberry. It's not exactly subtle, but I like how each of their names are based off the color of their team. The game offers a series of different maps, with 2 outside and 2 inside, and with power-ups that are gained when a certain number of spirit flames are scored by the player, like magnetism, a speed boost, and being able to see in the dark easier. The game, although you can't play the 2018 version anymore, has a genuinely great soundtrack as well, with different tracks for both the indoor and outdoor maps, as well as music for both winning and losing themes. Overall, it's a really fun experience. But we don't care about that, we care about the lore, so we've got to get started with that. First of all, there's one character that we haven't mentioned yet, and that's the spider referee officiating the game. I haven't heard any information about its name, if it has one, but I have seen plenty of jokes about how this is supposedly the same spider from the 2002 Halloween doodle. But there's more to this than meets the eye. Nate Swinehart, creative lead for this doodle as well as Jinx's Night Out, posted on Tumblr again with a few behind the scenes images. And in this catalog there are literally photos of the referee being Momo the cat. Yeah, the cat that actively eviscerated the ghosts from her school in the past, and the same one that is notorious for her defeating of ghosts, at least in 2016, is seen officiating the game for them. Weird as this isn't Momo's only presence in the game either. In the game, right in the tutorial, there are framed photos of her on the wall. But if you look at the photos next to Momo's, they're literally all there. Yes, the witches which we haven't seen for 3 years since 2015, they're finally back. Not as full characters unfortunately, but we finally see our first depiction of them in a doodle since then. And the photo next to them, it's Jinx the Ghost, back in the witch hat costume. Nate Swinehart also flat out confirms this in the Tumblr post, saying in a behind the scenes section that past Halloween stars Momo, Jinx, and the witches from World Candy Cup appear throughout the game. Nate's Tumblr also has behind the scenes info, and a lot of it was really surprising for me to find out. The first big shocker to me was learning that the game was originally posed to be a sequel to Magic Cat Academy, where instead of fighting ghost teams, a team of cats and a team of ghosts would fight each other. The Tumblr post also includes more scrap ghost concepts, including the original planned colors of blue and orange instead of green and purple, as well as doodles of the ghosts if they were disconnected from the game that never made it to the final cut. Going back to the doodle, let's try to figure out the pictures first. I think Jinx was kind of the first example of how not all ghosts are bad, about how they could change from their evil ways of the past as shown in the photo in Jinx's house. And this might have been a catalyst for Momo and the others to stop being afraid of them. Although this doesn't really hold up when you remember that Momo was absolutely terrified of Jinx seeing them in 2017. Let's take a look at some of the other maps that are in the game, which are called, respectively, according to the Google Doodle fandom, the Spooky Forest, the Spooky Library, and the Spooky Cemetery. While we can't be too sure where these maps are actually located, we can ask ourselves why they're so abandoned. Like, do they always act like that, or do the ghosts spontaneously turn everything near them into old and broken figments of themselves? And also, what the heck are spirit flames? Like, why do they follow around the ghosts in the first place? And how come they change color when they touch them? We can see that they're sentient when they're following around the ghosts, and they seem like they're smiling. But what do they do once the ghosts bring them back to their base for points? And what's the deal with these so-called mega flames? They actively move away from the players and give you 10 flames as a reward when you catch them. I imagine that, obviously, the spirit flames have something to do with the human or animal souls of the Google Doodle universe, by their name, but there's way more questions than answers regarding them. And this last bit here is a bit of speculation, but I think it's worth pointing out. And I think it's pretty weird that Jade, a green ghost, is seen in the loading screen reading a book, exactly like the green Candy Cup witch does in her photos and biography. It's also interesting that Sage, a green ghost as well, is seen wearing colored and shaped glasses, exactly like the blue Candy Cup witch. Now, I don't think that these ghosts are necessarily the witches themselves, especially with Momo being the referee being thrown in there, but I think these two witches and ghosts bear some pretty strong resemblance to each other, which is more than just a coincidence. With that, let's wrap up 2018 and move on to 2020. Given the chaos of the year that was 2020 and the loreless Halloween 2019 Google Doodle, the world was in need of a really good one, and luckily that's what we got. The Halloween 2020 Google Doodle was a full-on sequel to Magic Cat Academy, the original game releasing 4 years prior. In the game, the first fully animated cutscene shows us that this game takes place immediately after the events of Magic Cat Academy 1, with the previously defeated boss ghost possessing the entire ocean floor, sending Momo off on another adventure. Let's read the description. This Halloween, we're picking up right where our 2016 Magic Cat Academy doodle left off with a subaquatic Shriekwell. Dive in with Momo the cat to help new friends and reach new depths in our adventure against the big boss ghost and its school of ghouls, underwater. The game starts off with the celebration for Magic Cat Academy 1 coming to an end as the classmates realize that the boss ghost, who we thought we defeated, falls to the ground and possesses the entire ocean floor. Momo leaps off the roof of the school and receives the air bubble spell from Froggy, falling into the sea and fighting off the ghosts once again. It's nice to see her classmates doing something for once. The boss battles include the immortal jellyfish, a species of fish called boops boops, the vampire squid, and anglerfish, all of whom Momo rescues from being possessed by the ghosts and returning the animals to normal. The final boss, the boss ghost, possesses both the ocean floor and a volcano. As far as deaths go, instead of passing out and almost dying when Momo loses in Magic Cat Academy 1, in Magic Cat Academy 2, the bubble of air that surrounds her pops, forcing her to swim up to the surface and look down on the ocean that she failed to save. The game is pretty similar to the first one, with a few differences. It introduces a new spiral spell, almost the same as the lightning spell as before, which would take off one of the symbols from each ghost. We also have an additional spell added in the game, which is an extra shield given to us after drawing a circle. However, this only works when a certain sea creature is passing by. It appears to be a jellyfish or some sort of anemone, but I can't quite tell. There's no music for each level as well, which is a nice touch compared to the first game. We also get to see how the ghosts take control of the animals, possession as we might expect. But we also get something that we've suspected. The ghosts can possess inanimate objects, and this would explain the pot ghost and solar system ghost from Magic Cat Academy 1. But there's actually a character in the game who we haven't even discussed yet, and one that's not seen in Magic Cat Academy 1, and that's Sugar. And that's what I'm calling her at least, because we don't know her name. She's the one steering the boat in the beginning cutscene, appearing as something like a cat-mermaid hybrid. In fact, her name isn't even mentioned in the game itself, and I'm only calling her Sugar because of further down in the Doodle's description, where several photos of the real-life Momo the Black Cat and Sugar the White Cat are seen, helping out with the game's production. In the game, Sugar doesn't appear again until the 4th level, which takes place in her own ship, and helps Momo navigate down to the final trench level. Other than that, Sugar doesn't have a super major role in the game, but it does introduce us to the new friend that was mentioned in the game's description. And since there'll probably be another Magic Cat Academy game in the future, given the big boss ghost trip to space, it'd be nice to see Sugar in the future. Maybe they'll introduce a space-themed character next. Overall, the game is once again really fun, and makes for a great sequel to the original Magic Cat Academy. I still remember booting up my computer and playing it for a long time way back in 2020, and playing it again for the video was a nice dose of nostalgia for me. And that level 2 background music, come on, that's a banger. So let's move on to 2021. Aside from the Earth Day Doodle of 2017, the Doodle Champion Islands are the first game in the Lore series that isn't a Halloween doodle, so let's take a look at the description. Welcome to the Doodle Champion Island games. Over the coming weeks, join Calico Cathlete Lucky as she explores Doodle Champion Island, a world filled with 7 sport minigames, legendary opponents, dozens of daring side quests, and a few new and old friends. Her ultimate goal? Defeat each sport champion to collect all 7 sacred scrolls, and complete extra hidden challenges across Champion Island in the process. That wink holds a lot of meaning to it. Anyway, as the game's description says, the game follows Lucky the Cat as she travels to Champion Island and faces off against the 7 champions. The game as a whole is stylized in the 16-bit game style of the 90s, with retro music and animated cutscenes from Japanese studio 4C. By far the longest and most extravagant doodle available today, the game takes well over an hour to completely finish if you're trying to win all 7 sports and get every single other side quest. So let's start getting into the lore with our first character, Lucky the Cat. We don't know a whole lot about her or where she even comes from. We only know that she arrives on the island on a boat with someone else. This other person isn't ever acknowledged in the game and is barely even seen in the opening cutscene. This is one issue that I haven't been able to solve yet, but it'll be interesting to see if we get more information on it in the future. Anyway, back to Lucky. Lucky is a female calico cat and is implied to be fairly young in age due to the fact that a few of the other characters on the island repeatedly refer to her as a kid or a child. We also know that she loves to go on adventures, and is really good at winning sports. I mean, if this cat is able to come out of nowhere and demolish 7 masters of their own sports in one day, she'd be a pretty good athlete. And that's not even mentioning the fact that Lucky can literally teleport around as well, being able to pitch around the 7 sports of the world. Lucky is also cheerful and optimistic, and definitely a little too optimistic for the likes of some of the characters on the island. And speaking of characters, there's actually several from previous doodles as well, which is where our lore starts to come in. Our weather frog Froggy, for example, is seen at the table tennis bamboo village, giving Lucky a side quest to complete. A doodle that we haven't even mentioned yet is also seen after Lucky unlocks a quest to visit the secret running beach. One of the characters on the beach tells Lucky that they're just waiting for someone special. It turns out that this character is the pangolin from the 2017 doodle Pangolin Love, which celebrated Valentine's Day with a fun platformer adventure. Weirdly enough, the pangolin's lover is called Olive the Otter, which is pretty different from the pangolin state in the original game. And there's an absolute smattering of lore on the actual island itself, so let's get started with that. One of the less talked about areas of the island are the arcades in Tanuki City, the skateboarding region of the game. If you go into the arcade and take a look at the machines, they are literally the most popular Google Doodle games from the past. The games include Garden Gnomes, the 2016 Doodle Fruit Games, Pangolin Love, the Pony Express, Loteria, and most importantly, the Great Ghoul Duel, Magic Hat Academy, and the Great Candy Cup. Yes, the games that we have been playing all along actively exist in the Champion Island Games universe. In the library, also located in Tanuki City, one of the bookshelves reads Magic Hat Academy Anthology, The Adventures of Momo. And I'm guessing there'll be way more Magic Hat Academy games in the future if there's enough to write a whole anthology about them. Regardless, these games and library books introduce the theme of breaking the fourth wall into the doodle, which is seen a few other times as well. The Fox on the Beach, for example, says he wishes this game had an inventory system in place so I could thank you, after Lucky returns his table tennis paddle. There are also ghosts on the island, technically. Towards the most west part of the island, the artistic swimming portion, it features a trophy dedicated to helping a ghost who is the mother of a fisherman from Japanese folklore named Urashima Taro. This ghost is very obviously humanoid, and we'll be getting back to her further on in the video. But for those of you who have completed the game already, you probably know that I'm dodging the biggest plot point of lore in the entire game, which I'll get to now. As you help complete tasks and travel around the city, Lucky is awarded with trophies by the Trophy Master, who's an ever-watchful crane with a really creepy laugh. The crane explains that every time Lucky does something good for the island, she's awarded with a trophy in her name. And after Lucky's completed every single side quest and returns back to the trophy room, it's revealed to us that the true Trophy Master has actually been missing for months, and that the crane has been an imposter all along. Lucky is then tasked with the final goal of finding the true Trophy Master, and finally we arrive at the center of the lore. When Lucky finally reaches the ship at the top of the Northwest Docks, which is where she's told another cat is, a whirlpool is all she's met with. Jumping in, she finally finds the true Trophy Master, and it turns out to be Momo the cat. Yes, this is the Momo who has been in 6 previous doodles, and she's taking her place in yet another one. Talking with Momo, we find out that she's in fact the Trophy Master, but this is just a side gig for her. I'm willing to bet that her main gig is running her school, or studying at her school, depending on how you want to see it. And then the fourth walls are absolutely shattered, with Lucky the cat recognizing Momo from her own game series, Magic Cat Academy, and Momo doing the same to Lucky, recognizing her from the Doodle Champion Island games, while they're both in the game at the same time. At this point, the fourth walls are just completely eviscerated. The two characters then question if the other one has been controlling them in the game the entire time, and finally decide to let it go by not wanting to end up in an existential quandary. Momo says that she's been playing Lucky's game for a long time, and that she simply lost track of time. I find that really suspicious considering that Momo says she has to finish the game once she returns back to the trophy hall with Lucky, where it turns out she was friends with the creepy crane the entire time. However, I think that the reason Momo took so long to finish the game was because that we, playing as Lucky, haven't found her yet, and Momo playing the game hasn't found herself yet. I don't really understand it either. There's reasonable suspicion that the characters are aware that they're in a game themselves, but whether they know it or not, they seem relatively okay with the circumstances. One of the weirdest characters in the game is the Smart Kappa, who is the only Kappa bird who we are able to understand if Lucky doesn't join the green team. The bird goes on a really long rant about how his own existence seems meaningless, and asks if this is really all there is to life. I'm pretty certain that for some reason this bird is painfully aware of its own existence in the video game as well. The whole joke is a little odd, but it fits in with some of the other fourth wall breaking things around the island. But going back to the main lore, there's just so many questions that we don't have the answers to, like why and how Momo ended up being the Champion Island Trophy Master, or why she's been staking out in the boat for months, and of course the self-awareness of the game to tie it all together. There's also several different versions of the game that appear in the Google Doodle archives that appeared over the course of the 2021 Summer Olympics, and the final version, made for September 5th, 2021, features a few details and changes made to the game. In the first few versions of the game, if Lucky completed every single sport and side quest, she couldn't leave the island at all, no matter what the player did. And this ended up changing with the final game version, because we could finally leave the island once we've completed all the side quests and sports. However, there's some more weird details that are going on here as well. The two original lion statues that greeted Lucky as she arrived on the island revealed to her that people who leave the island forget their time there, essentially erasing Lucky's memory of the events on the island. And this is obviously a reference to how leaving the island will cause the game itself to reset, but there's another weird part of this. When we start the game on September 5th again, a new character appears, telling Lucky that she seems familiar and asking if she's been here before. And this is probably referencing previous times that the player has played the game and Lucky being unable to recognize the fact that she's been here before. The whole situation with Champion Island is pretty odd, and I can't help but think that there's something more than meets the eye when it comes to the Champion Islands. Like, what happens to them when the Olympics aren't in session? Is it abandoned? Do people leave? Ultimately, the Champion Island games leave us with a lot more questions than answers when it comes to connecting the lore, so I'm gonna leave off of them for now and come back to them later. I can remember playing this in the summer of 2021 and having a genuinely really fun time playing it. The game gives us a massive amount of lore as we've gone over, and I can only hope that we get even more in the future. And with that, let's move on to Halloween 2022. The Great Ghoul Duel 2. Similar to the Halloween 2020 doodle, this doodle was a fully fledged sequel to a previous doodle, so let's look at the description. Believe it or not, the Great Ghoul Duel is back and spookier than ever. This Halloween, we're revisiting an old haunt, but with some extra flair. In this multiplayer interactive sequel to the 2018 Great Ghoul Duel doodle, players around the world join in a team of 4 to compete and collect the most wandering spirit flames before the moon is gone. There are even more unpredictable tricks and treats this time around, including new characters, game maps, special power-ups, and more. So like the description said, the 2022 doodle added new maps and characters to the previous game. The new characters for the green team are named Emerald, a hand, and Moss, a koala bear looking thing. Why is he a hand? On the purple team, the new characters are Mauve the mouse and Amethyst, another hand. And I'm definitely convinced at this point that ghosts can be really anything they want to. The power-up that the description refers to is the jack-o'-lantern, which will randomly appear throughout the game in a location right between the two team bases. If you're able to pick it up before the other team, it grants you invincibility along with the ability to kill other players. Yes, not only are you safe from having your spirit flame stolen, you could kill other ghosts. Technically not kill, but it's pretty close considering that you're immobile for a good amount of time if you get hit with the pumpkin, and you're also sent back to your home base. The game also adds 2 additional maps, one indoor and one outdoor. The indoor map takes place in what appears to be a museum of some sort, and the outdoor map is a corn maze. A third level design of an amusement park was also in development, but since the amusement park in question was going to be abandoned, it was eventually scrapped due to the fact that the creators thought it would be too grim for the doodle. There's already a good bit of lore which we could take away from the 2 new maps. On the museum map, there are entire sections that are single-handedly dedicated to the ghosts. By the stairs in the middle, the 2 teams each have an entire group selfie plastered on the wall. Towards the top of the map there are also more framed photos, although I'm not quite able to make out what they are. It doesn't help that at the time I'm recording this, which is July 2023, the doodle seems to have suffered the same fate as its predecessor, shut down completely. With that aside, let's keep talking about the lore. I find it interesting that we already know human and animal ghosts exist, but with the additions of Emerald and Amethyst, whose names are green and purple gemstones respectively, there's really no telling what the ghosts in the games can take form as. And with the museum map now in our catalog, we could be pretty sure that the ghosts have a relatively large presence in the human world today. And I would definitely be willing to bet that the ghosts aren't as hostile either, given Jinx's proof that not all ghosts are inherently evil. But there's more details that we still haven't discussed yet, and they're found in the corn maze map. Towards the center of the map, right next to where the pumpkin spawns in, there's a little detail that I haven't seen a whole lot of people mention. It's Lucky. Lucky the cat is in the game. It's technically just a scarecrow, but the similarities are kind of undeniable. The scarf, blue coat, and the calico colorings of the scarecrow make it pretty obvious that the cat is a depiction of Lucky. Granted, Lucky isn't doing such a great job as a scarecrow here either. Towards the green part of the map at the lower left, there's another small detail, this time being the cardboard cutouts that are familiar at many amusement parks and carnivals. And as we can see, once again, a reference to the previous games. The cardboard cutouts are of Momo and her pumpkin classmate from the first 2 Magic Cat Academy games. So this essentially gives us confirmation that the GGD games and the Champion Island games take place in the same universe, along with the Magic Cat Academy games and pretty much every single doodle that we've gone over so far. And this also might suggest that the locations of the game's maps, at least the mansion and the corn maze maps, are probably located relatively close to the MCA. Unless all the characters receive complete fame in the future, which actually might be the case, it'd be pretty weird to have cutouts of characters who aren't even around the region. Even though we know for a fact that the Great Ghoul Duel and the other Google games take place in the same universe, going off of the Momo referee pictures, it's nice to finally get an essentially 100% confirmation of it. It's also interesting to consider that the ghost previously mentioned in the video, on Doodle Champion Island, isn't purple or green, and is instead similar to Jinx in being a grayish clear shade. although this could also just be the Japanese tale told accurately. One more change made to the game's sequel was the addition of hats, which players could earn by completing certain achievements in the game, such as collecting and stealing spirit flames or playing and winning games. The achievement titled Fruit Fest has a pineapple with a face, which could be a reference to the Day 2 of the 2016 Doodle Fruit Games to celebrate the Summer Olympics. However, there's another hat that the user can get by collecting a total of 30 Mega Flames throughout the game, and it's called the Momo Thinking Cap. This is easily the most blatant reference to Momo and the lore in the entire game. And I find it funny that Momo's hat was specifically labeled as a thinking cap, reminding us of her rarely visited scholarly attributes. And while we can't be entirely sure of the meaning behind the wide variety of hats in question, it's good to know that we have, once again, a 100% sure piece of information that ties the games together. Ultimately, the game was genuinely fun, and I really hope that Google brings it back one day. The game got us a good amount of lore as well, so with that, let's move on to the next doodle. The Bubble Tea Doodle was a little unexpected. Released on January 29, 2023, the doodle didn't seem to have any major holidays take place on that day, so let's read our description. Tangy and fruity or sweet and milky, the combinations are endless. Today's interactive game doodle celebrates bubble tea, also known as boab tea and pearl milk tea. Honeydew, matcha, raspberry, mocha. No matter the flavor, don't forget to mix in some bubbly balls made with fruit jelly or tapioca. Bubble tea gained such popularity globally that it was officially announced as a new emoji on this day in 2020, so that explains the doodle's release date. Satisfy your craving and make a yummy cup of bubble tea in today's interactive doodle, which features Taiwan's indigenous Formosan mountain dog, as well as a crew of familiar doodle characters. As the description states, the player takes the role of a mountain dog preparing boba for a few different characters. The game revolves mainly around timing, with the player being required to hold down the spacebar for the perfect amount of time to get the correct amount of ingredients. The game has 5 levels, which progressively get more difficult to fill with the correct ingredients. The first thing that we could ask ourselves is where the game takes place. We can clearly see a rainy forest with an emphasis on bamboo, but I think that we could take this one step forward. That's right, the game actually takes place on Champion Island. And to be more specific, I think it takes place on the table tennis section of the island. The bamboo forest and ever-present rain are obviously a dead ringer for the environment, but when we notice the stone lanterns in the background of the boba game, it's pretty much undeniable of where we're located. Even the dog's cart is made primarily out of bamboo, which is seen as the main plant throughout the table tennis section of the Champion Islands. So now that we have our first piece of lore down for the game, let's take a look at some of the characters. The first level of the game features a dog with a red collar and a gold tag, who we haven't seen in any doodles before but definitely isn't picky with the order. The second level features a sheep, who at first I didn't think was a character we've seen before until recently, so thanks to the Champion Island speedrunning Discord for pointing this one out for me. The sheep has actually been seen in one previous doodle, and that's for the 2022 Winter Olympics. Although the doodle isn't actually called this, it's officially called Winter Games 2022 Begin March 4th. The doodle is just a GIF, but it's got our sheep character in a ski suit skiing down the mountain with a few other characters for the Olympics. This is definitely the most subtle doodle callback in the whole group, and I wouldn't have found it if not for the Doodle Champion Island Discord server, so shout out to those guys again. The third level is where things start to get more interesting, and that's because our weather frog Froggy is back, and this time he's carrying a leaf above his head to avoid the rain, much like his 16-bit sprite in the Doodle Champion Island games when he gives a side quest to Lucky the cat. Weirdly enough, we also see Froggy on the opposite side of the island, appearing on top of the bridge in the aquatic dancing section. Moving on to level 4, we finally get to see some more noticeably familiar characters, Momo and Lucky appearing together in the same level. The two of them share one cup of boba together, with a purple straw for Momo and an orange straw for Lucky. But forget the straws because there's a few questions that we could ask. First of all, how come Lucky is back on Champion Island? After all, her game made a pretty big deal about her leaving the island after the games were all over. And it's possible that Lucky obviously just returned after leaving, but I think there's more that meets the eye here. When the game begins, we can see that there's a big rainstorm for most of it, and as soon as we finish up and close the shop, the rain immediately disperses and is replaced by sunshine. In the Doodle Champion Island games, one of the missions for Lucky in the table tennis region is to help get rid of all the rain. This is, fittingly, the mission given to her by the weather frog. Lucky gets rid of the rain by talking with a boy named Amefuri Kozo, who's also seen in traditional Japanese mythology. The trophy for Lucky involves finding a train ticket to the rest of the island for the boy to use after he lost his in the wind. Eventually, when Lucky gives the boy the train ticket, he finally leaves and takes the rain away with him. And this is exactly how the boba game looks, starting with rain and ending it with it fading away. Although in the game, when Lucky completes a task, she still has yet to meet Momo, so we can be pretty sure that this doodle takes place after the Doodle Champion Island games, not during them like I initially assumed. Going back to Lucky and Momo themselves, they're both seen in a more detailed art style similar but slightly different from the anime cutscenes in the Doodle Champion Island games. And while the two cats are obviously good friends as seen in the game, it's possible that they're actually dating each other as well. Given the frame of the two as they walk away, this wouldn't really surprise me. Good for them. Let's finally move on to the last level, which is probably the biggest surprise of all the levels for me. The customers on level 5 are the ghosts from the Great Ghoul Duel, and these are the ones from the original green team, Jade, Sage, Kelly, and all of the cat ghosts. But even weirder than that, we don't see them in their normal green shades. Instead, all the ghosts take on a much more neutral pale color, exactly like Jinx in Jinx's Night Out. Also, Jade looks really angry for some reason. Jokes aside, I was pretty shocked when I saw the ghosts in the game for a few reasons. We finally know now that the ghosts can actually visit locations that aren't completely abandoned, as was the case in the past. And we can also see that the ghosts aren't permanently stuck in one color either. Instead, it's much more likely that the ghosts only take on a color when they're competing in the Great Ghoul Duel, which canonically only takes place on Halloween night. And though we've gotten confirmation for this in the past, it's just some more additional information that we could use to see that the ghosts have long since changed their evil ways of terrorizing the masses and have since definitely mellowed out. And with that, let's move on to the final doodle. On July 12, 2023, after I was already done with this video script and already editing it, a new doodle popped up. And I'm writing this as I saw the doodle a few minutes ago. The doodle in question is called Celebrating Pani Puri, which is, according to the doodle, a popular South Asian street food made of a crispy shell stuffed with potatoes, chickpeas, spices, or chilies and flavored waters. The objective of the game is simple, which is to select the correct group of puris that matches the customer's order, fast. As a result of this, we're faced with the most incredibly, overwhelmingly impatient group of customers I've ever experienced in my life, with tempers running short within 3 seconds of ordering. Ignoring that, in the group of customers are, once again, Mo and Lucky, ordering Pani Puri like the rest of them. This time, they're drawn in a more abstract stylization, a lot like how Picasso draws cats. Mo and Lucky are just like the other customers, where waiting over 3 seconds to receive their order will cause them massive amounts of pain until they leave unsatisfied. There's another customer in line which what I originally assumed to be a frog backpack, but after waiting too long to get the order, we see that the frog's eyes actually move, and I'm pretty sure that this is the one and only Froggy. There's not many definite lore connections that we can make off the doodle except for a few. Mainly the fact that this is the first time we see Lucky, Momo, and Froggy interact with actual humans. Almost every single time we've seen them before, they're interacting with other animals, and in the Earth Day 2017 doodle, the entire city is filled with animals with no humans in sight. I'm not really sure what to make of this, but it's interesting to see some development with our main characters traveling to different areas of the world which have humans. Maybe there's some regions that only animals can get to. The Champion Islands only have a few humans at most compared to hundreds of animals. Maybe the animals and humans live in separate regions of the world? There's a lot of room for interpretation here, so if you have an idea of how the world functions here, feel free to comment it, because I'll be interested to see your opinions. And with that, we end our not so short recap of all the doodles. This last part of the video is going to go through the timeline of events as I see them and try to connect a few elements that I haven't gone over quite yet. Alright, so of all the doodles that have at least some element of lore in them, here's the rough order that I believe they take place. Global Candy Cup, Earth Day, Magic Cat Academy 1, Magic Cat Academy 2, Jinx's Night Out, Doodle Champion Island Games, Boba, Pani Puri, the Great Ghoul Duel No. 1, and the Great Ghoul Duel No. 2. This might be entirely wrong in every way conceivable, but I'm going to piece together why this is the relatively correct order in my opinion. Alright, starting from the top. Our story starts with the 4 Candy Cup witches, red, yellow, green, and blue, participating in the 2015 Global Candy Cup and fighting for the most pieces of candy around the world. The cat-obsessed yellow witch ends up absolutely obliterating the competition, winning the cup. And in doing so, we're introduced to her beloved cat Momo, one of the most important characters of the Google Doodle universe so far. We all know that Momo's first appearance was in the Global Candy Cup, but we still don't know why she appears as a normal cat in this game and as a wizard cat in most of the later games. The second doodle on the list is Earth Day 2017, and the main reason I put it there to begin with is that it appears Momo is still in her cat form, walking around on all 4 legs without her robes or wand. We know from the previously mentioned deleted scenes that Momo can transform from a normal cat into a wizard cat, so it's pretty difficult to tell when it might have taken place. Anyway, after Momo changed, our next game on the timeline is Magic Cat Academy 1, after Momo is attending her School of Magic, seemingly for non-human folk, and defending it against the attack of the ghosts, who seem absolutely obsessed with stealing her spellbook. Momo is able to defend the academy successfully and defeat the big boss ghost. Unfortunately, and much to Momo's annoyance, he comes right back in Magic Cat Academy 2 directly after, by possessing the creatures of the ocean and the ocean floor itself, destroying Sugar the Mermaid Cat's ship in the process. Momo then dives down into the ocean with a magic air bubble made by her classmates, and once again fends off the ghosts. She meets up with Sugar in her sunken boat, and the two of them travel down to finally defeat the big boss ghost. Once defeated, he's launched towards the stars with a glimmer of light. And honestly, if anything, this is just a massive indication that we'll have a third Magic Cat Academy game. I'd love to see how the ghosts react with the elements in space. For all we know, Momo could be going toe-to-toe with asteroids and comets. Right after the events of both Magic Cat Academy games comes the Halloween 2017 Doodle Jinx's Night Out, where we get confirmation that the Magic Cat Academy and Candy Cup games take place in the same universe. We also hear that the game takes place a year after the events of Magic Cat Academy. In the 2-minute animation, Jinx, the main character of the Doodle, is shown to have fear over the ghost's past treatment of other people and wants to join Momo, Froggy the Weather Frog, and the Fox, all from the Earth Day 2017 Doodle, with trick-or-treating and trying not to scare them. After going through a series of unsuccessful costumes to try and hide their identity, Jinx finally decides on a ghost costume to approach the trio. Jinx helps Momo with her dropped hat, but blows her cover when a gust of wind blows away the sheet they're using. Both Momo and Jinx are in shock and fear for a second, but Momo ultimately decides not to attack Jinx and instead invites them to trick-or-treat with the group, resulting in a happy ending for everyone. The next Doodle on the timeline follows the adventures of Lucky the Cat in the Doodle Champion Island games, competing 7 different sports and bringing peace and balance to the island. She encounters the Weather Frog from the past, as well as a slew of references to previous Google Doodle games. But the biggest reveal of lore is of course the fact that Momo is the trophy master of the island. So let's talk about how that might have come to be. While there's plenty that we don't know yet about the story, I believe that Momo ends up sailing off to Champion Island after the events of Magic Cat Academy 2, where at some point she meets the Crane character and becomes the trophy master. I've seen people suggest that the boat Momo is found in the Doodle Champion Island games is actually Sugar the Mermaid Cat's ship from Magic Cat Academy 2, but personally I don't see a whole lot of resemblance between the two ships. Going back to the timeline, after the Doodle Champion Island games are over, in the future, the Boba game takes place. It's here on the Champion Islands, specifically the bamboo table tennis region with the stone lanterns and rain, that the game takes place. We're revisited by our Weather Frog Froggy along with Lucky and Momo once again, who have either become close friends or are simply dating each other. In level 2, we see the sheep from the 2022 Winter Olympic Games. The final customers at the shop are the 4 ghosts from the original green team in the Great Ghoul Duel: Jade, Sage, Kelly, and Olive, although they're strangely discolored from their usual bright green hues. And while we've already gone over this lore so far, one of the biggest takeaways that I took from it is the fact that the ghosts exist at the same time as Momo and Lucky do, at least during the relatively short future after the Champion Island games. Next is celebrating Pani Puri, which follows more of Momo and Lucky as they go and experience new places and travels. And that brings us to the final games in the timeline, the Great Ghoul Duel games, which I believe take place far into the future, when Momo's school has been abandoned for some time, as well as the outdoor areas. I still think that the game maps have to be related to Momo's school to some degree, with the paintings, cardboard cutouts, and Scarecrow of Lucky the Cat being evidence to that. The two games follow the matches between the green and purple teams, fighting for the most spirit flames on Halloween night while the moon is full. And that, my friends, is the lore of the Doodle cinematic universe. Going through the lore was honestly a much bigger test than I thought it would be, and there's still a lot that we don't know about the story as a whole. But for now, I'm super excited to see where the story could be headed next, whether that's more games, an animation, or even something else entirely. It's been pointed out that the Halloween 2022 Doodle was originally meant for 2021, but was pushed out a year due to delays. So that gets my hopes up for this year's 2023 Halloween Doodle. I'm predicting that the 2023 Halloween Doodle is going to be another Magic Cat Academy Doodle, likely space themed, based off of a cat emoji that Nate Swinehart himself used while I was talking with him about the doodles and this video itself. If you're watching this, Nate, you're awesome. But whatever comes, I'll definitely be analyzing the lore of any future doodles that arrive. The amount of details that they have packed within them is genuinely pretty staggering, and establishing the whole story and timeline was pretty difficult and open to interpretation. For all we know, and as I hope, there'll be a whole lot more to come for the Google Doodle universe. If you think I missed something in this exploration, or you have any ideas of your own, feel free to leave a comment on what you think, because I'm going to try to include as many as I can in an upcoming video. So that's going to wrap it up for this one, and I want to give you guys a big thanks to anyone who watched it in its entirety, because you guys are genuinely great. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Thank you.